Welcome back to You Asked For It, the show where you ask questions and we talk about them. So anyway, we have a question today.
That's
Ready?
good. Yep.
That's good. This is not going to be a totally pointless video. It says this, I have a question to ask. The day of the Sabbath, what day is it? Some say Saturday, others say Sunday. And depending on what day it is it bad if you work on that day? So, the Sabbath.
The Sabbath.
Shabbat.
I would say it's pretty easy to answer. It's just a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, the Sabbath is a Jewish holiday, the day of rest. It's Saturday, copied after creation, where God created all things. And on the seventh day, the last day, which is Saturday, he rested. And from there, the law came to keep the Sabbath day holy and to rest on the Sabbath day. The Jewish people came up with laws on top of laws. They went beyond the intent of the law. The intent of the law was to be mindful of God and not do business that day. They went so far, they made law upon law upon law, which wasn't from God, that you can't do anything on Sabbath, to the point where you'd even prepare your food and stuff the day before. And that was all man-made stuff, just religious BS is what that was.
There are Jews that still do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's part of the religion.
However, to answer that question today, that once Jesus Christ died and rose again from the dead, he kind of fulfilled the old covenant and the old law, which we followed. There is no longer a law about the Sabbath, whether it is Friday or Saturday. I mean, Saturday or Sunday.
Or Friday.
Or Friday. But in Christianity, there are two things. One is that we do church as Christians on Sunday because that was the day of resurrection. Number two, there is no law to what day. As a matter of fact, as Christians, we are to celebrate every day the same. There is not one day more holy than another day. There's no such thing as holy days at all in Christianity. We have the presence and relationship with God every single day. It's all the same. The practice of taking a day off to spend more time in fellowship with others, even relationships, and being, mindful of God is a good idea. It's not wrong or right. It would be a good idea, or the wise thing to do would be take that day where we fellowship together, we could do church together, Christians come together and we celebrate God, we're mindful of God, to not go to work like normal. If you have to work, you have to work. It's not a bad thing. It's just a good idea if we can celebrate together, take a day off together, being mindful of God. That pretty much, that's just the answer, of kind of the
we definitely don't have to observe the Sabbath anymore, but you kind of alluded, it's probably a good idea. I think it's wise to take time to rest from fast-paced life, from phone notifications all the time, from go, from your work 10 hours a day with commute to come home and you work more and then you got to go work up at your cabin, like all these different things. So I think the idea or the practice of still resting from that is good. Probably does our body well. But you mentioned it's not just sitting back on your couch on a Saturday and just being lazy. That's
right.
Maybe there's some benefits to that too. I have no idea, but this idea of like, God, I need you to like refill me. I want to focus on it. This is a time really dedicated to you. So I would say to that, we celebrate and go to church on Sunday or whatever, kind of this Christian thing, but I still don't think most people really rest or Sabbath on Sundays.
You reminded me of another practice that we could allude to kind of in the same way, and that is fasting. We don't talk about fasting much today, and maybe we should. I think there's value in fasting, but many Christians would fast, just stay away from food, but doing everything else the same. The value is, if you're going to stay away from food, it's for the purpose of the time, the nourishment, or the satisfaction I would get from food, I am going to get from God. And so by not changing anything else, just not eating that day, is called a diet. Okay? That's called a diet. fasting is taking that off to be mindful of God. The same with a Sunday rest. It's just a rest day unless it's focused around experiencing God and his people and relationship and resting that way.
And our culture has really changed. I know growing up, a lot of stores were closed early on Sundays. They're still not open the full hours. Most stores aren't.
Because they can't get workers nowadays.
Well, okay. Pre-COVID, they were okay.
Okay.
But, you know, we live in a society where I want it and I want it now. So stores and places are open to fulfill those needs. But I know for my family, we would go to church. We would just Sunday was a low-key day. It was a day that we just spent together. We would spend time with God. Not as much as we should or what the Sabbath was truly intended to be, but, you know, our culture has changed.
Yeah, if you're as old as me, you would remember stores were all closed. You couldn't go get a pound of butter at the grocery store. There was no grocery store open. Literally everything was closed. You had to get your gas on Saturday because there's no gas stations open. It was just literally nothing was open. And that was probably some good things. Besides any kind of a religious idea here, I think doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, people who study humanity would say this principle, which is from God, the principles from God, this day of rest is a good idea. It's not a mandate of it's a sin if you don't. It is just a very good idea.
So we have a time where science is backing up.
Oh, yeah.
Something that God says.
Happens all the time.
I thought science disproved faith.
The science always proves faith. It proves the Bible. It proves what God says.
I think in the question, probably the thing that stuck out the most to me was the last part. Is it okay to work on whatever day it is? And I think with the Sabbath or with any other Old Testament law or rule or even some misunderstanding stuff in the New Testament, there are no rules to follow.
Right.
There are no regulations and you got to do this and you got to go to this special place. I was reading on Facebook this morning. I'm part of a lead pastor group or whatever. And this one person commented, hey, we're doing a remodel and we don't know what to call the sanctuary. You know, it's got a lot of people coming to know what the sanctuary is. What should we call it? And they just commented, call it the auditorium. Like,
that's what we call it.
Call it the room that it's supposed to be called. Like, why do we got to over spiritualize all this stuff? Like, it was just the most ridiculous question I could possibly think of. But along those same lines of like, no, you don't have to set aside a certain day. You can be with God anywhere, anytime, in any circumstance, any place. A 5-minute break at work. Be with God. This like, it's religion trying to creep back into what Jesus paid a pretty high price to get rid of. There are no rules anymore to our relationship with God.
You know, we talk about it pretty flippantly, you know, oh, that's Old Testament. But maybe you're not aware that there's such a difference as Old Covenant, New Covenant, Old deal with God, New deal with God. There was a law that God had his people live by. That law has been fulfilled by Christ, so it no longer is valid for us. Doesn't mean those practices that aren't good ideas. They are no longer a law in which we must follow. Old Testament had a law that you have to tithe, give 10%. The New Testament doesn't have that law. Jesus, he set us free from the law and all that performance stuff. And Christianity is much different. But Christianity doesn't, giving is still a great idea. As a matter of fact, God kind of calls us, it's not a law, but he says, I want you to be generous. That could be 25%. You know, I mean, it's, but there is no longer, and I think there's a lot of Christians who just aren't really aware of that the law has been fulfilled and shut and put away. We live now in relationship. We don't live under law. We live in relationship.
Yeah.
Big difference,
Thank
actually.
God.
Yes.
It's so much easier.
So much better.
Yeah.
Such a better deal.
In many areas, a higher calling, a higher price.
Yeah.
But
The giving
better.
one is such a great one. Well, God doesn't require the tithe. Yeah, he wants your heart.
Yeah.
But you think that's 10%?
He wants you to surrender all of it. Okay, I'd rather go back to the 10%, you know?
Oh, well. Okay, well, hopefully that answered your question. If not, leave a comment, or if we brought something else up that you have a question about, just comment, send us an email, stop us in person sometime, and we will hopefully get to your questions in another episode. Thanks for tuning in. See you later.